talk about now the hormones of labor and birth. And in my opinion, understanding this part is the most important and powerful thing that you can do to help change the course of your labor and birth experience and outcome. So, first thing to really understand is in our body, we have two automatic nervous system responses, and you might have heard of these before. So they're called the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, otherwise known as the parasympathetic is otherwise known as the rest and digest or the feed and breathe system, and the sympathetic nervous system response is known as that fight or flight or freeze or appease system, okay? And so what happens when we're in our parasympathetic nervous system is that we are feeling really calm, okay? We're relaxed, our breathing is slow, our heart rate is slow, and what's happening is that all our blood is being sent to our reproductive organs, to our digestive system, okay? And so this is why we really need to be in this parasympathetic nervous system or a really nice calm state when we say make love, and also when we are in labor and birth, and we're going to dive into that more in a moment. Okay, so even a simple thing as, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you are at someone else's house or on a holiday or somewhere not at home, you're less likely to need to go to the toilet to do a poo, okay? Because our body knows on a subconscious level, oh, we're not in our usual spot, and we're just a little bit out of that parasympathetic nervous system when we're not completely just relaxed and comfortable in our home environment, okay? So the sympathetic nervous system then, so this is then when that fight or flight response kicks in, and this is your body's survival mode, all right? So what happens when we're in this response is our heart rate speeds up, our breathing speeds up, and the blood in our body is sent to our extremities, to our hands, to fight, or to our legs to run away, or we're kind of caught off guard and we're frozen, okay? We can't move, we're just full of that, kind of fear, all right? The other thing is appeasing, just doing whatever you're told to do, all right? So with these two nervous system responses, I think it's important to understand what's happening psychologically is that when we're in the rest and digest or the feed and breathe, we're feeling in control. We don't feel like anything bad is going to happen to us because we're in control. There's no threats around us, okay? There's nothing that can come in and hurt us. We're feeling safe. We're in control of our body, our thoughts, our emotions, and our mind. When we are in the sympathetic nervous system, there's a threat to that control, okay? So, whether it's a physical threat, an emotional threat, a re-triggering of trauma, whatever it might be, feelings of being out of control or someone threatening to take that control away are coming over us, and our body enters into this survival mode to be able to achieve safety, okay? So what we know is that when we're in the rest and digest or the feed and breathe system, this system is what allows the hormones of labor and birth to work well, to be released. So this then is your oxytocin and your endorphins, okay? So oxytocin is that love and bonding hormone. So this, like I've explained, this is the hormone that's released when women have an orgasm, okay? It's the hormone that women release when they breastfeed their babies. And it's the hormone that causes contractions in labor and birth. And oxytocin works hand in hand with endorphins. So endorphins is your body's natural pain relief system that when they can work to their fullest capability are up to 3 times as strong as morphine, okay? And endorphins are released through the senses when things feel good, Okay, so that's through nice touch, through nice smells, through yummy food. All of that kind of thing is what releases endorphins for us. And so oxytocin and endorphins, they work hand in hand in this beautiful mix when women go into labor and birth, to really help women cope with the pain. And then when oxytocin can work well, then the woman is going to have effective contractions that then will shorten the length of her labor. Okay, so to break it down, when we are in that rest and digest, or that feed and breathe system, nervous system response, the hormones of labor can do what they need to do, and there's nothing blocking them. Okay, when we go into labor and birth and we are in the sympathetic nervous system response, or something happens to us in our labor and birth that puts us into this sympathetic nervous system response. So this is the fight or flight, or the freeze and appease. Then what happens is we get this big rush of adrenaline, of stress hormones. And all of these stress hormones block oxytocin and endorphins. And so this is because, again, back in the day when we lived in caves, if we were on the land, saying we were in labor and birth, and then there was a big tiger that was, coming through into the cave, this would be our body's way of going, oh, now's not a good time to have a baby. Let's shut this down. No more labor and birth because we need to run away. There's a threat there. Okay, so our bodies are still physiologically the same. So, when we are triggered into this fight or flight response, we get this big rush of adrenaline, of stress hormones, and it can block or slow down the hormones of labor and birth. Okay. And what I want to point out here is that this does happen a lot to women and to families. And this is a big reason why birth trauma and PTSD is so high. So 1 in 3 women walking out with birth trauma, 1 in 10 with PTSD. And that's because trauma occurs when we are in this fight or flight system. There's this threat occurring to us, and we think that either we are going to die, or someone close to us is going to die, or there's going to be really significant harm to us. Okay. And I want to make clear that this is not because labor and birth is traumatic and scary, but because of the way that we perceive labor and birth, and the way that sometimes when we are in labor and birth in the hospital and things unfold, and the way that we're treated, or the way that we're not involved in that decision making, and this control is taken away from us, that this is why birth trauma happens. Okay. And so, like we've spoken about in this course, this is why I keep going on about that informed consent, informed decision making, stay in control. Because when we hand over our control, or where that control is taken away from us, we're so much more likely to fall into this sympathetic nervous system response, this fight or flight, or this freeze and appease. And then when things happen, it can then be traumatic. Okay. So really, really important to be doing things that keep us in a nice, relaxed, calm state, in that nervous system response, that fetal breed, where we're just so chill, we're just super relaxed, so that our hormones of labor and birth can do what they need to do. So we need to be removing any threats, any perceived harms. And the other thing we need to do is the mental preparation that goes into preparing for labor and birth. Because what we know in our culture is that we receive messages from when we're very, very young about how scary labor and birth is. It's the most horrible, horrific thing that a woman can go through. It's punishment. In some religions, they say that it's actually punishment on women. We have this overall perception of labor and birth that it's horrible. Okay. And so what happens for a lot of women is that they've been brought up told that they're going to go through this horrific event. So the moment they start having contractions, they're like, oh my goodness, this is too much. And then they go into that fight or flight response. Their hormones of labor and birth don't work as well as what they would if the woman was nice and calm. And then they need medical intervention because their body's not been able to do what it's needed to do. And then we know with medical intervention that then increases the risk of traumatic experiences like emergency cesarean sections, forceps, vacuum, fetal distress. And then we've got this cycle of the woman going, yeah, labor and birth was horrific and traumatic and all of the things that, I was told that it was growing up. And that just perpetuates the myths in our culture around what labor and birth is. When actually, if that woman was brought up in a culture where she was told that she's strong and she's capable, and yeah, labor and birth is intense, but when you do it, you are an amazing, incredible, powerful woman, and that it can also lead to feelings of such strength and empowerment and capability at the end of it, then she may have had a very different hormonal response and potentially a very different birthing experience. So this is why the mental preparation for labor and birth section is so important. And so that video is upcoming. But really, really thinking about staying, like I said, in that parasympathetic nervous system response, doing a nice deep breathing, because that tells our body, we're safe, everything's fine. If we're hyperventilating, that tells our body, there's a threat and triggers us into the stress response. So this is why staying nice and calm, doing your mental preparation, setting up your birth space, all of these things, having your endorphin touch massage, natural pain relief remedies, all of these things is so, so important so that your hormones of labor and birth can work to the fullest of their ability so that you can have a beautiful, less painful, shorter labor and birth experience.